Buenos días, colegas, y muchas gracias por atender esta sesión. Good morning, colleagues, and thank you for attending this session. Today, we're going to be discussing the role of carbon registries and their key pivotal action in generating the high-integrity carbon credits, as well as their role in boosting transparency in the carbon markets by connecting to other systems such as the Climate Action Data Trust. As you know, carbon registries serve as the backbone of tracking the issuance of retirement, transfer, as well as transactions. They enable secure and transparent verifiable records. So the role of registries is really clear. They are important and crucial for the scaling up of carbon markets. What is less clear, and where the complexity comes in, is in the design, the development, and the implementation of carbon registries. And that's why today we have a great panel of speakers who will shed light on some of these unclear areas and maybe providing some insights from the practice that they have. Some questions that come in from countries are, when we talk about the carbon registry, what does it include? Which functionalities? Transaction, issuance, tracking, reporting, accounting? And if a country wants to set up a registry tomorrow, what are the options available? Should they build one from scratch? Should they build an existing service? Or should also they leverage the UNFCCC Article 6.2 registry when it becomes available? So there's many questions in the ecosystem, and we hope today to have this really excellent panel where we can discuss these topics and gather their views and insights. So I'm just going to briefly introduce. From left to right, we have Ana Dominguez Lopez, carbon pricing and carbon markets expert from UNFCCC RCC Panama. We have Andrew Howard, Senior Director, Climate Policy of Verra. Next, we have Chimi Dorji from the Ministry of Environment and Energy and Natural Resources from the Royal Government of Bhutan. And last but not least, we have Yeba from the industry sector on the Climate Action Data Trust. And we are missing Juan. I don't know where is Juan. So he may be running, so he will be able to join much later. So before we deep dive into all of you, I would like to ask you a quick question. I would like you to pick one critical area that you have in the realm of carbon registries, and also one pain point. And I know the list of pain points is endless, but please just pick one briefly, each of you, and then we will deep dive into more questions. So over to you, Ana.
Thank you, Gemma, and thank you for the question. I'm going through a flu, so please excuse my voice and any difficulty in speaking. As you mentioned, I work within the RCC Latin America, one of the 6 regional centers of the Secretariat, which is based in Panama City and covers 17 countries in the Latin American region. Our main role is to provide support through the implementation of the Article 6 capacity building work program at national and regional levels, and technical support on Article 6 readiness, mainly on participation requirements and CDM transition. One of the critical area that for me that I see in these aspects related to carbon registry will be ensuring transparency and accuracy in tracking and reporting of carbon credits, recalling that the Paris Agreement is based on an accountability system through its enhanced transparency framework, and that all efforts made by parties to comply with the NDCs, including the use of Article 6 cooperative approaches, must ensure the environmental integrity of the Paris Agreement and avoid double counting, with this achieving transparent tracking of action is a clear objective that registry system in general must ensure. So thank you.
Thank you. Over to you.
Good, thank you, and it's a pleasure to be on the panel. So hopefully we can have some great discussion here on these issues. I think the priority area that I would mention from the point of view as Verra is a piece of work that we're calling the Playbook. It's a rather strange name. We haven't yet settled on the exact title, but essentially it's to be a kind of operating procedure, standard operating procedure, whereby countries will be able to have a clear path for how they can work with independent crediting programs like the one that we offer, the verified carbon standard under Verra. So there's a lot of countries that want to be able to use our systems for registering projects and for actually conducting the MRV, and to use our registry also for holding credits. But what's not clear at the moment is exactly how that works, how that interface works with country governments, both on the seller side, the host country side, and also on a buy side. So the playbook is to try and integrate all of these processes of countries with crediting programs, and it's a piece of work that we're doing with the government of Singapore and also with Gold Standard. So it is out of the box a collaborative attempt to try and map out these processes. And as the work progresses, we're also starting to share it with a few more countries at this stage for getting feedback. But we're hoping it can be rolled out. Pain point is very much related. Just quickly on this, I think what we're seeing at the moment is we don't yet have a kind of best practice emerging on how exactly country procedures should look, and what sort of optionality there should be within it. Every country is, of course, working through for themselves how they're going to do Article 6, how they can do their implementation. And I think with time we'll see some best practices emerging, which will guide countries ultimately. And our playbook is trying to address kinds of that kind of thing.
Hello everyone. My name is Chimi Dorji, and I'm from Bhutan. Just wanted to, before I start going to the questions, I would like to thank World Bank for having us here, and it's an honor and privilege to be a part of this distinguished panelist here. Just to update on our work in terms of readiness initiative in Bhutan, the World Bank has been through and through with us, and would like to publicly, officially thank here the team. All the teams are here, starting from the moderator herself, and I would like to thank the team for the help, and we look forward for similar support in future as well. And currently, we are developing a policy framework, carbon market policy framework. We do have carbon market rules being adopted in 2023, and based on the rules, we are currently developing carbon market policy framework. And the registry was also a part of the help from World Bank, and we have launched the registry last year in COP28 in 2023, and currently it's up and running. It is being like integrated with the CAT Trust, and also we are on the front of cooperative approach. Like we are in discussion with Singapore, the government of Singapore. We have signed an MOU, and we are currently negotiating. I think it's almost 1 year negotiating the implementation agreement, and we hopefully will sign the implementation agreement in July or August of this year. So this is the short update. And on the question, like we have been developing this registry, and it's up and running. We involve Druk Holding and Investment. It's not a government entity. It's a government investment firm. It's a tech company. We identified the tech company as a eligible and a legitimate capacity that we have, the basics of the technology that we have in Bhutan. So we brought them on board, and we developed a registry in collaboration with World Bank. The DHI have developed the National Carbon Registry. So it's up and running right now. And the pain point here is like we really lack the capacity in terms of financial, in terms of the technology capacity. So thank you.
Hi. Thanks a lot to the organizers. It's a pleasure to be here, and fantastic to be representing CAT Trust. I know we'll have a session later today, but as an introduction to our work. Taking a step back with everything that we've heard yesterday, today, this is a complex and complicated space with so many parts evolving as we speak, right? So you are all navigating how to approach the VCM, how to integrate Article 6 into your national approaches, how to make sense of this space, right? And right now, if we wanted to use publicly available information to figure out what carbon credits exist in Colombia at this very second, it's not even that straightforward. So CAT Trust is a public good answer to solve and demonstrate how to solve these challenges around transparency using technology. So we are a partnership between the World Bank, AITA, and the Singapore government to provide public good data infrastructure to link, harmonize, and aggregate carbon credit information on a common data model to introduce a best practice, basically, and offer some examples of what this looks like in the space. So in terms of connections to registries, we're not a registry, but we aim to sync up and hopefully set the tone for common approaches in the market on how to make this information very accessible and how to facilitate all of the integrity and transparency approaches that, for example, Andrew introduced around playbooks and how these things work together. So we aim to bring, we do bring stakeholders, some of whom are in this room, to discuss these issues and advance a platform that offers this information to the market. In terms of pain points, I think the data fragmentation as we have it is a pain point in the market. So we are addressing that actively through trying to accelerate registry onboarding to really demonstrate what this aggregation harmonization looks like. So that's a major focus for us in the near term and a critical priority. I'll leave it there, Gemma.
Great, thank you so much. I've heard from panelists pain points. We see complexity in the space, we see fragmentation, we see lack of capacity, and for a more need of harmonization, but also critical areas is there's also optimism. There's a lot of country work on registries, UNFCCC updates. Andrew talked about rule books and laying down the procedures, and Yeba was explaining about this public good, harmonizing and aggregating data. So there are pain points, but critical areas, and the market is working on them. So now starting with Anna, we just recently came from SB60 from Bonn. There's updates from Article 6.2 and 6.4, Mechanism and International Registry. Yesterday we heard from Perumal, but maybe we can hear from you more specifically on the registry from your side. Would be great to hear. Thank you.
Thank you, Gemma. During SB60, parties agreed to have an intersectional workshop before Substat 61 to discuss cross-cutting matters between Article 6.2 and Article 6.4, specifically on authorization, the agreed electronic format, sequencing, application of first transfer, among others mentioned yesterday by Perumal, as you said, during his intervention, including the issues regarding registry. As outlined in Decision 2, CMA 3, paragraph 29 and 30, to be specific, each participating party must maintain or have access to a registry to track various actions. These actions cover recording through unique identifiers. First, authorization. Second one, first, transfer and transfers. Third one, acquisition. The fourth one is the use of IDMOS towards their NDCs and also to other international mitigation purposes. And the fifth one is voluntary cancellations, including for overall mitigation global emissions, if applicable. The international registry shall be able to perform this function that I just mentioned, and any party can request an account in this international registry. The issue of contention in the negotiation is whether the CMA 3 or CMA 4 agree to two registry approaches for Article 6.2 registry, which includes the international registry, for example, to hold and transfer IDMOS as units and pull and view data about units held and transferred in underlying registry, as Perumal mentioned yesterday as well, or agree to only one registry approach, for example, to pull and view data about units only. Regarding the Article 6.4 mechanism registry, the mechanism registry is being developed to track credits throughout their life cycle, from issuance, forwarding, and to retirement. We are currently in the phase of building the digital infrastructure for the registry, with an emphasis of having a user-friendly system and also the interoperability with the existing national registry and in general international systems. The registry will also feature public transparency measures, allowing stakeholders to access detailed information about projects and credits transfer. The interim registry for the Article 6.4 mechanism, known as Perumal mentioned yesterday, now as the Paris Agreement crediting mechanism, will be available by end of September and fully function the new mechanism registry by mid of next year in 2025, and the international registry system will be expected to be live by late next year. In this sense, the Secretariat will be organizing the Article 6 RSA, which is the Registry System Administrator Forum, and aims to first facilitate cooperation between registry system administrators. Second, to promote knowledge exchange. Third, to enhance capacity building between registry system administrators. And the last point is to provide input to the further development of the Article 6 infrastructure, communication standards, and recommended practices. The output of this RSA forum will be delivering inputs to the standard and recommended practices for electronic recording of data and information related to IMOS, and communication standards for interoperability and transaction with IMOS, including record keeping arrangements, data security protocols, risk management, and disaster recovery procedures, and other practices that have to put in place with this kind of system. In summary, significant progress has been made on both registries, the Article 6.2 International Registry and also the Mechanism Registry. Continuous collaboration and focused effort will be critical in the upcoming months to ensure these systems are fully operational and contribute effectively to the Paris Agreement goals. And I will say that it's very important that parties have, or at minimum, have access to an effective tracking system that enables the party to participate in the IDMO market. And this registry system has to be robust, and is crucial for ensuring that all carbon credits are accurately tracked from issuance to retirement, preventing issues like double content and also fraud. The registry system shall provide a clear and transparent record of transactions that could be trust among different stakeholders, for example, governments, private sector, investors, businesses, thereby fostering more participation and investment in carbon markets. So I would also like to reemphasize that the establishment of country-specific national registry are not a must to participate in Article 6 cooperation. That means that it's not a country participation requirements. Each participating party shall have, or at least have, access to a registry for the purpose of tracking only, and this can be served by the Article 6 International Registry when it's fully operational. Party has two ways to access to the International Registry. The first one option is making use of a party-specific section of the International Registry as their participating party registry, or the second one is interoperating their own participating party registry with the International Registry in accordance with the Decision 6 of the CMA4. And to conclude, with this regard, I would like to emphasize that parties that choose only to participate in the Article 6.4 mechanism, this mechanism will be complete, will include a complete system that will enable the registration of activities, the issuing and trading, the using of elements, that more importantly, with the pre-filled option, with all the information that will be needed to report into the agree electronic format to the Article 6 database. Thank you.
Great. Thank you, Anna. That was very rich. And I think I talk on behalf of the market that we will be closely following updates on Article 6.2 and 6.4. Just if we had to summarize in one or two sentences any key messages to the countries, what would it be?
Yes, I think that the most important thing is for the parties is to ensure that the system that is available or they want to put in place in their own domestic purposes has to ensure the different action that can ensure transparency and accuracy of all the transactions, as I mentioned, the different action for authorization, for holdings, for all the retention for overall mitigation purposes and those things.
Great, thank you so much. Now moving to the next speaker. So we have been talking about latest updates on 6.2, 6.4. I would like to take one step back because in the ecosystem of registries, sometimes we conflate functionalities, roles, whether the registry includes issuance and then accounting and transactions. So I think we have Andrew and we can benefit from his depth in knowledge on this regard. So Andrew, can you walk us through from your carbon crediting program perspective the differences between issuance, transaction, and accounting functionalities? Maybe walk us through the process for the people in the room. Thank you.
Sure. Thanks, Chima. And I wanted to put up a couple of slides to try and explain this. And the first one is really just an explanation of, it's giving an example of what it is we're trying to do in order to try and draw out this distinction between an accounting layer and a transaction layer. And so this is essentially what we're doing for a number of different countries. Specifically, it's got Ghana on the left-hand side and Singapore as a buyer on the right-hand side. But really speaking, the blue parts in the middle are kind of the bread and butter of what we do as a crediting program. So we're registering projects and we're doing MRB and issuing credits. So some nuances on this in order to fit within to a country framework is, I guess, that Singapore, at the end of the day, what it's looking for and what it's saying to us is that they actually want to see the credit which is used against the Singaporean carbon tax to be retired directly on our Verra registry. And then what we would do is give information to Singapore. And so I think the crux of this slide is really the fact that you need strong and clear information exchange in order to make it work between countries and independent crediting programs. So it's not just Verra. In this case, we're doing this collaboration, as I mentioned before, along with Gold Standard and Singapore. But essentially, you can see on the left-hand side, Ghana needs to know information in order to be able to do its authorizations and to do its accounting and to do its reporting under the UNFCCC. And the kind of information which needs to be exchanged needs to support the oversight of Ghana over the projects that it has in its country. And it also needs to be able to input into the accounting and the reporting that it does for the UNFCCC. And in that case, it needs to know information on what transactions have taken place, what has actually been issued, and if it has been traded from one place to another. Ghana wishes to know where the credits are at any one particular point in time. At some point, a first transfer could occur, and it will need then to be able to undertake the accounting steps in order to reflect the fact that a first transfer has taken place with a credit. And then similarly on the Singapore side, speaking generically really about buyer countries, they need to know very similar information to what Ghana as a host country is needing to know, but also they will be needing to input into their own accounting as a buyer and doing their corresponding adjustments. So in this example, you've already got a situation where in the blue there's something which is very core to the transaction which is happening, and that relates very much to the actual credits, or more generically to units. And then you've got accounting angles which need to be layered over that for country purposes. So if we can just go to the next slide. I'm not sure where the clicker is. In the back of the room, perhaps. To the next slide, yeah. So there's a few things on this that I'll step us through. One is that this transaction layer that I'm talking about is really what's happening to the actual units themselves. So it could be a credit, as in the kind of credits that we issue on the basis of carbon projects. But I think very similarly, it also goes for allowances under emissions trading system. So this is anything that happens to the actual units themselves, to the allowances and to the credits. And I think this is very crucial, because what it does in carbon market terms is it builds up a platform for the private sector to really get engaged. Because there are tradable commodities at work here. Those are the credits and those are the allowances which are being acted upon by private sector. And when private sector is involved, that's when the investment is flowing back to the host countries, obviously. So this transaction layer gives information on what credits and allowances are being held, who they're being held by, and also when they move from one buyer to another or from one country to another, then it's possible to track what's happening to the actual credit itself. If you just go forward one stop. Can we go next slide? One click. Right, so I've just put here what is, I think, also part of this transaction layer, but these players at the bottom of the screen, they play a very different kind of function. They don't hold credits, but they are the forum, they are the platform where a lot of the actual trades are made. So you'll see that a lot of in the credit markets, a lot of what is, whether the actual trades are being made over-the-counter trading, but also through exchanges and through trading marketplaces. So this is where they get people to get together to buy and sell, but that information needs to be reflected back into the registries which hold the credits and the allowances. And I think this goes whether you're talking about an emissions trading market or whether you're talking about a credit market. So you always have that that information being mirrored back as a holding into the registries. At the top of the screen, you've got what I've called the accounting layer, and this is because all of these transactions which are taking place below, they need to at some point be reflected into the accounting that a country is doing. So through the corresponding adjustments, which are then included in the biennial transparency reports. And I think the point I'd really try to stress here is that these are different functions of registries. So the accounting layer is as crucial as the transaction layer. Sometimes, particularly for Article 6, a country may only need to implement that accounting layer because it's perhaps they don't have carbon pricing policies in place, and they don't need to have a detailed set of information themselves on the unit transactions which are okay. So if a unit transaction takes place on our registry and then the holding is there, it can be mirrored back. And I think that's what the arrows here are also to show, that in order for a national registry of a country to work, it needs to pull information from all of those registries where the holdings are of different credits. So it would be pulling information from its own carbon tax registry, but also pulling from crediting program registries.
Thank you, Andrew. And just before we finalize your intervention, any tips or advice to the countries in the room that are going to set up their national registries? Any tips in either they access or they develop one aligned to the layers that you have explained? Any key messages?
Sure. I think the first thing I'd say is bear in mind this distinction between an accounting layer and a transaction layer, because depending on your policy circumstances, you may not need to implement both, and you may be able to rely upon other registries external to yours in order to actually hold that transaction level information. Now, I suspect that most countries who are in this room, because you're here, because you're implementing carbon pricing programs, you'll need a registry in order to run your ETS, in order to run your carbon tax. what I would say is be aware of that distinction, because then it can influence how you need to build it. And for those countries who are perhaps not in this room, who are not implementing carbon pricing policy yet, they can actually make a much simpler run of this whole registry area. So in view of time, I would leave it at that.
Yes, thank you again, Andrew. Very insightful, very technical, and very necessary to make these distinctions and clarities. And it's again our homework as part of the key stakeholders to provide more clarity on this space. So now moving to Chimi. Chimi, Bhutan established and launched the National Carbon Registry at COP28. And that's the culmination of a long journey that Bhutan has started a few years ago, first with the carbon market rules, which actually had a provision that the ministry would designate the operator, and then we went through the process of training, deployment, the registry. So I wanted to ask you, why Bhutan decided to engage in establishing a national carbon registry? What was the process? And then, of course, leveraging this great model, any tips for the countries in the room? So over to you, Chimi.
Thank you, Gemma, for the question. I would like to start off by saying, thank you for the question. I would like to start off by saying, in the presentation by Anna, she just mentioned registry is not a mandatory for the parties to participate in the carbon market, especially Article 6 carbon market. But Bhutan, we took it as a mandatory, and we considered that as a prerequisite to move early on. We wanted to be a front runner to participate in Article 6 market mechanism, international market. So we considered that as a prerequisite, and as she mentioned, it's in Article 6.2 guidance, there is the parties must have or shall have access to the registry or a tracking system. So for Bhutan to, as I've mentioned, for Bhutan to participate in the market early on, we decided to have the registry. That's number one. And the second is the transparency and environmental integrity. I think it's a long. I think we have multiple interventions made since yesterday till today on transparency and environmental integrity. It's a key. It's a heart of the current market. And in order for that to achieve, I think there are many ways, and one of the ways is to have the tracking system in place. And a registry is one of the system which actually provide the transparency and integrity of the market. So that's why, Bhutan, in order for us to tap into the market, we must have this system, and that's the second reason and motivation that we have the registry in place as a national registry in place. So the third thing is Bhutan, we also view this national developing or having national carbon registry as a part of building our own national capacity. So in the beginning, we deploy. We coordinate with Druk Holding and Investment, which is completely different from the government organization, and they don't have the basics of climate knowledge, and they don't have climate professionals. But in due course of time, when after coordinating with them, after developing the registry, I think we have developed a lot of the capacity in a space of developing the registry, at the same time in the space of climate knowledge and a carbon market knowledge in the space of carbon market. So that's third thing, and the final thing is we really want to participate in the market. In order for us to meaningfully participate in the market, we should have this registry in place. So the third motivation is Bhutan. We are trying to tap into the market, and we want to be a premium supplier of the high integrity carbon credits in the future. And it's good to hear Norway, they wanted to be a acquiring country, and for us we want to be a supplier country due to the fact that we are carbon negative by 6.7 million ton of carbon dioxide equivalent for now, and we have a plan to monetize that net negative emission through ways and means, and registry is one part, and we have other policies and strategies in place as well. And one thing is like we have a strategy where we want to plow back, and like acquiring country, the criteria, one basic criteria is to, like, they're looking for the environmental integrity and social and mitigation core benefits. So our strategy is to plow back the carbon revenue generated from the market mechanism into every single individuals. We can do that because because of our smallness and taking advantage of our smallness. We are just 0.7 million ton, I mean like million population right now, so we can do that very easily, and that's one of the strategy, and that's why, like, in order for us to meaningfully participate in the market, we have to have this infrastructures in place. So that's why we came up with our own national carbon registry. That's fourth point, and since it's still a work in progress, we have developed and we have launched the registry, and it's up and running. It's integrated with CATRUST. Only sovereign national registry currently with CATRUST, with others, I think 5 or 6 independent registry with CATRUST. And the governance framework is still developing. It's being helped by World Bank, and it's still in a work in progress, and I may not have much to give advice or like tips for other countries to develop your own national carbon registry. But having said that, the few things that I would like to mention is like political willingness is very important. I think that's one crucial thing a country can have, because at the end of the day, whatever, like any kind of new ideas or solution you may have, the government approval and the process, the approval process in a governance system is very important, and willingness to accept the new system and technology is very important. So one thing that country can consider is you have to have a strong political will. And another thing is a technology readiness. For country to engage in the process to develop national carbon registry, you have to identify a company or maybe government agency which do have the basics of blockchain technology, because the CATRUST core registry is all to do with the blockchain technology. So that's why we coordinate with the Druk Holding and Investment, which is of course outside government agency. So that's why we were able to install and deploy the registry within 2 weeks. So we have to identify a company or a tech company which actually can do that very fast in your country. So, and one thing that the one lesson that we have learned is like there should be a clarity on the governance and ownership of the registry. Since the governance structure is not yet out, we are currently in discussion with World Bank. I'm like World Bank and the DHI, because who will operate the policy operation of the registry. Of course, like DHI, they can do the operation, like the registering projects, but we have to have like authorization, issuance of the carbon credits. That needs a policy decision, and there must be a clarity when you engage in developing the registry. You have to have that clarity from the beginning itself. And one lesson learned is like the coordination within or among your, like the technical team and the government agency is very important. As I mentioned, like without knowledge on a carbon market and climate change, it's impossible for someone to have the system built very fast. So that's why when you identify the registry developer, you must identify someone who have the background knowledge on market, background knowledge on climate change. So that's another thing. So I think the time is up. Thank you.
Thank you, Chimi. This was a very comprehensive list of advice and tips to the countries in the room, and I'm not gonna go through the summary, because that was really, really comprehensive. But again, just showing that Bhutan took a very entrepreneurial approach, and also championing technology, and at the same time, as Chimi said, it's work in progress. So taking a little bit of a risk to build the tool and improve it in the way, and try to model to other countries what is possible. So next, this is a great segue for CATRAS, but before I would like to introduce Juan Duran. He's usually not late in panels. Juan, maybe over to you for a quick initial remark. I was mentioning before, if you can pick a critical area in the area of registries and a critical pain point, just briefly, based on your experience as a registry service provider in the space, and then I will move to Yeba for CATRAS, because I know Yeba has to run to another panel. So over to you, Juan.
Thank you very much, Gemma. And actually, first of all, I want to thank you all for your patience while I was taking some medical attention for my leg that is hurting a little bit today. Saying that, one key thing is clear information, having clear information to everybody to understand what is happening with every single project, which stage the project is in, like where the project is, what kind of activity the project is implementing. That's key. The barrier that I find very difficult for countries right now while working with them is that requirements are changing constantly, and many things are not decided yet. For example, like Article 6. Requirements or specifications. So implementing a platform normally takes a procurement process from a government that should be fixed and cannot adapt over time. And right now, since the market is evolving, we do believe that there needs to be a way of having the countries or giving the countries the possibility to adapt to this evolving market.
Thank you so much, Juan. Over to you, Yeba. My first question is, and we've heard from Chimi about the registry being connected already to the CATRAS, but tell us, what is the role of the CATRAS in this overall ecosystem of registries, and why countries should connect to the CATRAS?
Tall order. No, thanks a lot. So, I come after 4 panelists who spoke about different angles of transparency problems. So the way we see our work is really to help make this happen, right? So Juan just spoke about transparency on a project level, even just looking at the life cycle of an asset once it's issued. How will you know? How will you find this information? So we facilitate that. But then stepping back to what Andrew was talking about these various information flows that need to happen as all these frameworks are coming into place, right? If we look at the transaction layer and the exchange of information between the voluntary and national registries, and then all the relevant accounting that needs to come on top that countries need to follow, how will you know? Just on a very practical level. As a government or as somebody who's trying to observe this process and try to ensure that things are happening in a transparent manner, where will you go to find this information? And we see CATRAS as one of the answers to this, right? We want to be a trusted source of information in the market to facilitate all measures of accounting and reporting that need to happen, but also to inform all the stakeholders that drive action to ultimately scale investment into through high-integrity carbon markets. So as Anna was saying, as the UNFCCC develops its processes, and we're looking to solve a lot of similar issues. How do we ensure there's no double counting? How do we ensure that national frameworks are syncing up on both ends? We are looking to very closely collaborate and support all of you who are engaging in these processes, as the guidance evolves. So from reporting to just generally representing the need for greater coordination, simplification in the space, and working, on the registry side of things as it evolves. So, kind of looking at this side, we aim to be the voice for greater coordination across the space, and ultimately to scale investment, right? So, looking from a country perspective, there are a couple of angles that I'd highlight from what I just said, and what we're looking to drive is, we want to simplify things for you. So as you develop your national registries, that will be used for a variety of reasons. Maybe there's something that having this information out in the public and in a simple, unified format will be useful for you. So we're hoping that we can help things on your end. And obviously there's, taking the kind of private sector perspective, there's a value of a shop window that we offer, right? So we are a global platform that aims to put a lot of carbon credit information in one place. So as the space evolves and as we hopefully become, a mainstay in the market, we will be a way to showcase credits to investors as and when this happens. So as Chimi was saying, we currently have information from 6 registries side by side, so covering 85% of current market data. So with the addition of Verra, obviously that's a big step, but also we have biocarbon registry, we have the Global Carbon Council, and EcoRegistry, left you for last, as well as the government of Bhutan and the CDM credits that are still active. So even by that collection, we already have a cross-section of what's available in the space. So for everybody looking to enter this market and understand it better, Cat Trust serves as a trusted source of information. So basically, as you evolve your national approach to carbon markets and as you put out these assets for investment and as you're looking to drive greater transparency in the market, Cat Trust can be that window of transparency, so and hopefully help drive investment. And then so this is a national perspective. I can go into the private sector because I know that's kind of what we wanted to.
No, I think that's great. We've heard how CATRAS aims to aggregate and harmonize carbon market data and putting all these registries together and disclosing this rich data to potential investors and buyers. So there's a great value on this and transparency. Thank you, Yeba. Any final remarks on if a country would like to connect to CATRAS tomorrow, what are the next steps?
The next steps would be to decide what you are doing on a registry, which I know is a big focus for today, so hopefully you'll spend some time doing that. But in all seriousness, you have many smart people to consult on this question. So then the process of connection, we aim to make it as simple as possible. So there's a series of technical steps that we need to follow. One of them would be to map the data, so basically figure out what you are hoping to report from your side, and then we have a standard kind of common denominator data model on the information of carbon credits that we aim to collect and show in the public domain. So that would be an exercise to basically match of what you call things to how we call things and make sure that we're talking about the same thing. And then there's a step of technical integration, which we're very happy to help with technical partners, regardless of which registry you choose. So we can touch a bit on that a bit later this afternoon.
Great, thank you. I would like to open the floor to the audience and see if there's any questions for our panelists today. Any questions to Anna, Andrew, Chimi, Juan, and Yeba, and then I would like to go back to Juan. But just wanted to be mindful of the time. We started a bit late the session, so just want to make sure that we have questions from the audience. Any questions? Please, Daniel, and then. Can you put your mic, please? And introduce yourself.
Sorry for that. Daniel Sierra from Put Earth. And very quickly, Andrew. In the slide you showed of the Ghana crediting mechanism, you showed a dotted line from retirement to investors, and then a not dotted line from investor to project development. And I was just wondering what was the connection there, and if you can talk a little bit more about that. Thank you.
Please go ahead, Andrew.
Okay, so the dotted line was really just to show that the company which could be retiring the credits on our registry against a Singaporean carbon tax, that may very well be the original investor in the project. So it was just trying to make that relationship. Generally speaking, of course, you're going to have investors coming in, and they might then be selling on the credits to the people who are ultimately retiring it against carbon tax.
Thank
So
you.
it can go different ways.
Thank you. I think there was a question from...
Yeah, thank you. My question was for Jeva, and I would like to know if the CAT Trust already confirms or maybe corroborates information between registries, just in case, which we have seen identified between registries. There are cases in which a registry has, for example, cancelled some credits, but still available in other registries or under another name. So yeah, that's just to avoid double counting.
Thanks. Great question. So yes, one of the purposes for establishing CAT Trust as a public good is to help avoid cases such as this, or just prevent double counting, right? So we address this now by starting to aggregate this data, because really to address this problem, you need to be able to identify it, if it happens, where it happens, and kind of be able to dig into the details of that. So the first step that we're taking toward this is what I said, greater aggregation, just making sure that data from different registries is reported on the same kind of data model in one place. So that's step one, working on it. The second step we're taking is trying to figure out how we could automate this process and kind of what role we can play. So right now within our governance structure, we have kicked off a task force on double counting. So essentially gathering views and inputs and trying to formulate the problem in a technical kind of perspective from all the stakeholders involved in our governance, so private and public sector, including crediting programs, on saying, okay, how do we define this kind of, I guess, what you described as kind of double issuance, or a potential case of double issuance, like, let's say. So, yeah. So what would this look like for CAT Trust to perhaps flag this? What would need to happen, and kind of where does our role as a data aggregator end, and where could kind of the private sector step in to like help identify these things, and then kind of how can we use our governance or like the stakeholder collaboration that we have also as a potential mechanism on addressing this, right? We have standards sitting side by side in our governance and saying, hey, this thing seems to be happening. Should we talk about how we address these things? So we're currently just kicked off the work on this. So these are the two angles that we're taking to address this problem.
I want to add just something to what Eva was saying. The CAT Trust is more than just a platform, because it's also a gathering of many stakeholders that are sitting under. Actually, right now, the CAT Trust is having the working group of double counting,
Yeah.
I believe it's the name, and in that group, all the stakeholders from the CAT Trust participate and analyze those type of issues.
Thank you, Juan and Eva. Any other questions in the room?
Yes. This is a question for Andrew and Juan on how to increase the visibility of the middleman, like when the units are not yet cancelled but are being transferred between traders and investors. A lot of this is very opaque right now, and it's very hard to know where some credits are. And I think countries would be interested in knowing more, and also third parties would be interested in knowing more about this. Like, is it possible to make this layer more visible, or are there some confidentiality issues that prevent registries from doing that? Thank you.
Do you want to take Andrew and then Juan?
Sure. So all of the holdings of credits are available to see on our registry. They Um, I think what's perhaps a bit more opaque is the ownership structure. Who actually owns each of those credits, and that's typically, certainly up until now, not something that we've been dealing with as a registry. But I think this goes also, certainly back in my history working on the UNFCCC and CDM registry, it was the same then. You can see where a credit is being held, but it's not possible to see who actually owns the credit because that's very different. And I think as we go forward, I think that it is a good question as to whether that should change, whether there needs to be more visibility of the actual ownership. There are definitely confidentiality issues there, which will need to be addressed. So that would need to be worked through further. But I certainly appreciate that it's a bit opaque now, and from a policy perspective, the countries in particular may wish to know more about where a credit is being held and who by.
Yeah, just to complement a little bit what Andrew was saying. So right now, it's kind of a confidentiality problem, what we're facing. But I believe the market has heard that there is a need for implementing such a solution and such a traceability. So the traceability is given inside the registries, of course. So at the EcoRegistry, for example, you can see all the issuances, and then at the end, all the retirements. What you cannot see is who is holding the credits in between. There are possibilities to implement in such kind of reports, specifically for auditing purposes. But I believe that opens up a conversation that we are very open to discuss and have.
Thank you all. Any other questions from the audience? Kazu, please. And Kazu and Michael.
Yeah, thank you. Thank you very much. And maybe my question is to Juan, to EcoRegistry. I think you mentioned about the requirements are changing, and at least maybe kind of with the heart of negotiator of the Article 6, we have kind of decided already to some extent, which is, as just Anna mentioned, about Para 29 of to CMS3. It is a tracking of ITOMOS, which already identify what kind of information will be tracked. What we are currently discussing, so-called additional functionality of interoperability. So I think based on what we have agreed in Glasgow as well as Sham, I understand that the parties can start operating. So that's why I think really great to see Bhutan and many other countries are coming forward. But I do understand there are certain kind of functions that some parties or countries needed. So to what extent the registry can accommodate such changes, and then how you can accommodate those changes?
Thank you, Kazuka. Very important that actually, as Anna mentioned, there are already many functionalities already, and many requirements already have been decided, and that's actually what Chimi and Bhutan already implemented, like the core registry. Very important. From my experience engaging with countries, there are also other functionalities different than just complying with the UNFCCC requirements. Like right now, for example, one of the key questions is how is a national registry going to interact with the mechanism registry and the international registry? How should the APIs look like? So since that information is not yet decided and the development of the international and the mechanism registry is not final yet, and there are no test platforms, that is one question that I would address that needs to be changed in the future. That would be one that I would say. The other one is also that when you engage countries, it's not just about having an accounting system for the projects. You also need to have like an information management system to make informed decisions. That is also a requirement for the country so that they can track their achievement to the NDCs. And at the end, what they would value a lot is how to develop their biannual transparency report, for example. Those kind of functionalities are, let's say, or requirements are almost all of them are already, but the countries need also guidance in how to go from getting all the data and all the information that they need to actually having the platform that delivers them what they need. That's one key point that I would address. And the last but not least is also, for example, from my experience working with some subnational states in Mexico, or even we could do an example similar to that in Colombia. These subnational jurisdictions in Mexico have implemented a carbon tax. So other than just a registry for their projects, they also need to have, let's say, a compensation workflow platform that allows them to have full control of what is happening during the compensation process and understanding which projects and which units are being used or not, and which are retired, who are the beneficiary, and how the workflow happens. So from my perspective, I would say those are like the changing things. Then to answer your last question, that was like how long does it take for a registry to implement those? Once, actually, it's an evolving thing. So what we try to do, and just talking from a more technical perspective, like we implement some agile implementations, and that's what we are with the countries we are working. We are working in an agile way, so that actually the scope is not defined, but the time and the value is already defined. But the scope can change over time. So once the scope changes, then you have time to implement these new solutions, and it depends on how difficult they are to implement. But I would say most of them are not so difficult. The only one that is difficult is waiting to having all the information from the development of the international and the mechanism registries, because right now we don't have the APIs to connect and share the information with them.
Thank you, Juan, and thank you, Kazu-san, for the question. I see Hernandez looking at me that the timing is on, but I think we have one more question. Since we started this session later, Michael, you want to go ahead?
Thank you, all the panelists. I'm Michael from the Japan Ministry of Environment, and I have a question to Andrew from Verra. If a country wants to use your registry as their national transaction system, can you provide a service? And if so, what are the important elements that, or in terms and conditions that country needs to kind of agree with your standard? Thank you.
Thanks. I think the extent to which a registry like our registry can perform those functions for a country is really, I mean, in the first instance, it's about actually having projects which are registered and undergoing the MRV under our system, and the credits are then issued on the VCS registry, the Verra registry. I think that's something which doesn't need specific terms and conditions for. That's really what's already happening. There are, 2,200 projects currently on the registry, and most of them are actually issuing credits. I think the next step becomes, how do you actually define the kind of information needs that a country has? And I think Juan's also talking to some of these points. So what are the information needs that a country has at different stages, and what sort of actions is a country going to take at different stages of a project cycle? So at the beginning, it'll be going through the stages of seeing if a project fits with the guidance that the country is setting. So does it meet the country's requirements? Does it get some sort of approval or no objection from the country? What sort of monitoring information needs to flow back to the country in terms of saying what's happening to the project, what sort of emission impacts is the project having? Maybe there's some impacts on sustainable development goals. All of this is information that's of interest to the host country. And really what we need to go through is a process of defining what that information is that a host country needs. And at the other end, what kind of information is it that the buyer countries need? So we haven't really addressed it so far through the lens of terms and conditions, but we have been addressing it, and this is going back to the playbook work again. We have been addressing it in terms of what sort of sequence of processes and what sort of information is needed at each step. So I think that's going to be really crucial. And I think a lot of the reason why we believe it is very useful if a country can make use of crediting program registries like ours is because you then, we are already that platform for private sector investment. And there may be some benefit as well in being able to rely upon platforms which are already out and being used by private sector in order to channel that investment back into the country needs. So I think that's a big advantage of tapping into these existing systems that we have.
Thank you so much, Andrew, and thank you, colleagues, for your very active Q&A. If there are no any remaining questions, we're going to close the session. Before we close, just to remind you, today at the end of the day, we will have the technical workshop, which is a round of pitches and demos from industry, private sector providers on trading platforms and registry services. And if you can stay in the room, you'll see one of the major players in providing these services. So encouraging you to stay and see the demos. But thank me, please. Join me in thanking me, these great panelists today. So thank you all and enjoy lunch.
Hola, hola.